Guys, what is up? Pilot Manny here with the RC Plane Addict. I want to welcome you to my channel, a place where I get to share my passion and addiction for flying these beautiful RC planes. So I'm inside today and I thought I'd show you a few things that I do, especially when I get that brand new plane for Christmas and I'm excited to fly it. But the reality is I don't know how much time to put on my timer. I don't fly really with telemetry telling me the volts like those high-end flyers. I kind of rely on my timer to tell me when I need to come down, but I also want to make sure that I have at least 20% left on my battery so that I know that if I need to go around, I have that battery life still in there, and also I don't wreck my battery, right? We want to make sure we don't go below the 3.7 per volt, or excuse me, per cell voltage, because then you could really look at destroying your lipos and the life of them, and that's never good. Then you end up with puffed packs and you gotta chuck them, and you don't need to deal with any of that. So let me show you what I do with that brand new plane that I just got, and I want to set my timer up so that I know I can fly it responsibly and not have to worry about puffing my battery or not using the battery to the most of its capacity. All right, so when you get to the field, you want to have a few things to kind of make this thing work. I have here just like a sticky piece of paper, just something that I can write down my notes and then obviously do the math. I have a pencil. I have my battery checker, and you see me with this. This is the Cellmaster 7. I got this from Hobby King, but honestly, there's a ton of different versions that you can get from Amazon, and they all basically work the same. The beauty about this is it can check a bunch of different battery types. It can also do your servo, so that's always good. So this thing has a lot of really good function. I use this all the time. I keep it in my bag. And then of course you want to have your battery, right? So the very last thing is grab yourself some kind of, I don't know, calculator. I use my phone. That seems to work very easy. I have, you know, a very basic function calculator. That's all you need to do your math with. So depending on what kind of plane you buy, I mean, obviously the manufacturer will have the, I guess, the estimated runtime for how long you could fly your plane. And then of talking to friends and YouTubing it, you can kind of get a good idea of how much time you can get on your plane for the type of battery that you're flying. I have the Cirrus SR 22, which is from E-flite. It's a great plane, and I have this 4-cell battery here. That's a 2200. Now, I know more or less that I can get about 6 to 8 minutes, but I don't really know for sure. So just to be on the safe side, I set my timer on my transmitter to really like generous 4 minutes, which means that I'll be able to fly comfortably knowing I'll never run out of battery with that time. But also the way I fly is as soon as that 1 minute timer tells me that I have a minute left, then I kind of just land my plane. And normally there's time left over so that I can do the math and kind of figure out how I'm using my battery, and I'll fly it normally. So this is just an example here. Imagine that I set my timer to 4 minutes. And here's my battery, and I'll check it when it landed. And it tells me here that I have 15.29 volts and I have 41% left on this battery, which means that I have used 59% of the battery. Okay, so I'm gonna rate used 59% of my battery, okay? And my timer on my transmitter told me that I have about 30 seconds left, which means that I actually flew for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And normally the way I set up my transmitter is if I am below 20%, the timer stops. If I'm above 20% of throttle, the timer counts down. So that's kind of a good realistic expectation of how to use my battery. So realistically, my timer only ran for 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but I had it set for 4 minutes. And in that 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I used 59% of my battery. Okay, so let's start doing some math so I can figure out how to set my timer on my transmitter so that I use about 80% of my battery, and that's exactly where I want to be. I want to see my little Cellmaster here tell me that I've used 20, or that there's 20% left of my battery, so that my voltage is close to 3.7 volts per cell, and that's going to be perfect. All right, so on my first flight, I flew for 3 minutes 30 seconds. And I was left with, what did we say? 41%, so that means I used 59% of my battery, okay? Now I wanna be able to turn all of this into one unit, so I don't have minutes and seconds, so why don't we just turn it into seconds, okay? So to turn my minutes into seconds, I'm gonna multiply 3 times 60, and that's gonna equal 180, and then I'm just going to add the 30 seconds to that, and that's gonna give me 210 seconds total, all right? So I've used 59% of my battery in 210 seconds. So what I'm going to do is set myself up with a simple proportion. I'm going to say 59% over 210 is going to equal 80% over some number. And this is the number that we're looking for. We're trying to figure out how long can I fly for and use only 80% of my battery if I'm using 59% of my battery and flying for 210 seconds. So using this, I'm going to set myself up with an equation. And I know this is gonna get a little crazy, guys, but stick with me. Trust me, it's not that scary. And once you practice it a few times, you got this. So I'm just gonna cross multiply. I'm gonna do 59% times X, and that's going to equal 59X. And then this is where your calculator comes in handy. You're gonna take that 210 and you're gonna add it to 80. And you're going to get 210 times 80. And you're going to get that 16,800. I know this is a big number. And now we're going to do a little bit of algebra, and this is where it gets fun. So we're going to divide both sides by 59 because you want to get that X by itself. And then you're going to get 284, and we'll say 75.75. So what this is telling me is that if I fly this plane for 284 seconds with 3/4, then I will have about 80% of my battery. But what does that mean in seconds? Well, if I divide this by 60, I'm gonna get 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The 45 seconds is what the 74 or the 75 is equal to, which is 3/4 of a minute. So if I fly for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, I'm going to use roughly 80% of my battery. So on my second flight, what I'm going to do is set my timer up for 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I know that I'm going to land before this because I usually start my landing process when that minute alarm goes off on my timer. But if I don't, I know that I have that extra cushion time to get me down for safely with battery left over. Go ahead and try this method out. See if it works out for you. I know it's a lot of math, but this is what I do. I even do it on the field, and it seems to make sense for me. And this is how I figure out how to set up my timer on my transmitter properly so I don't run out of battery time no matter what battery I use. Guys, I hope you liked that video. I hope you use this method to help you out with setting up those brand new planes so that you don't tank them because you ran out of battery, and you fly safe out there. Hit me up with any questions. Make sure you give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.